Just a Job is the podcast for the modern woman to redefine what success looks like. We highlight real women and their real stories. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Just a Job. Happy Tuesday. This episode's coming out on a Tuesday. Hope everyone had a fabulous Memorial Day weekend. We've got kind of a spicy weekly stand-up here ready for you guys.
Spicy, tearful.
Roller coaster of emotions. Strap in, grab a coffee, put your headphones in, go for a walk. Like, one, the weekly stand-up is going to be great, but two, the interview will be incredible as well. So that was a very long intro. Hey, Sarah, how's it going?
Hi, Ellen. It's good. I'm so glad that we debriefed before this because if you didn't know, this was my first week of starting my new job, and holy shit.
Yeah, Sarah, give us a temperature check. How's it going over there?
All right. So career history for me, if you didn't know this already, I've always worked for smaller companies. And I think there's pros and cons, obviously, with anything. But a pro being the onboarding experience. There's always typically a really lengthy onboarding experience that feels very personalized. You know, you get to know the people. And my experience has always been a lot of meetings, one-on-ones. Hey, Ellen, I'm Sarah.
like
here's
buddy.
my career history, a buddy. Or you're meeting people on your team and you're like doing lunches. That was not the case. This was here's your desk and figure it out.
And your laptop, that's all you get.
And I am figuring it out, baby. And, you know, I feel like in all of this, especially since starting the podcast, like truly I'm taking the approach that like this job is not my identity. This job will like allow me to learn a ton, like really trying to be a sponge. And I have been so chill this week, so chill. And sweet Michael, he's been like, why are you so chill? I'm like, I'm chill, bro. I'm so chill. He's like,
whole new me.
He was like, I'm worried about you. And I was like, I'm worried about me too. So anyways,
I was like, steam's coming out of your ear. He's like, I'm fine. I'm okay.
I'm fine. Yeah. I mean, and genuinely, like, I think that it will get better. I'm trying to decide, like, is this just first week nerves or is this genuinely how it'll be? So figuring things out. But yeah, I think it kind of hit me. And obviously I broke down to Ellen, if you couldn't tell by my tearful face. But anyways, Ellen got a new project at work. What's your thoughts, feelings towards employment?
Well, first of all, Sarah, very proud of you with your first week, and especially coming into a new place. And not only is it a new place, but maybe not the most welcoming, perhaps, and kind of just throwing you in. Like, you're doing it, girly. You're surviving. You completed your first week. Congratulations.
Doesn't care how it went. It just happened.
It happened. My new project. So we're both in huge companies now. So we're talking about kind of the similarities between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, I had a slower, nicer onboarding experience. So I'm definitely grateful for that. And I got assigned a project officially last week, starting to get the ball rolling now. And wow, differences between smaller and larger companies. I was just telling Sarah earlier, we don't have one security team. There are 4 security teams. We don't have one legal team. There are 5 legal teams. We don't have one SSO team. We don't have one AI team. It's like, and there's probably 8 or 9 different departments within this project. Within the departments, there's at least 3 or 4 teams. And then each team has at least 2 people assigned to the project. So this is like massive, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And I'm like, okay. And there's so many acronyms. And this process that I'm helping streamline and working on is insane. The software is really old, so it's just like this hot mess. And so I'm trying to learn the process and then redo it at the same time, while also trying to understand where all of the teams sit. So it's like, I'm kind of like looking around like, oh, I gotta know how to do this. Oh, and that's how that works. So it's just a lot going on. It's going good so far. And I'm trying to be strategic, and maybe it's advantageous for me to come in without knowing anything, so I can like challenge more questions, be like, well, why do you do it that way? That's kind of silly. Like, can we change this kind of thing? So that shall be interesting. But it's kind of the project work itself, I think will be fun. Like I did a lot of process streamlining, simplification, like time boxing, prioritization stuff, which like sounds so boring, but I think it's kind of interesting and at least like somewhat fun to do. I think
Mm-hmm.
that part will be interesting, but the like project itself and like what it's doing is so boring to me. Like sourcing and procurement. Ew. I was talking to Toby about it the other day, and she's like, "Yeah, that's not sexy at all." And I was like, "You nailed it on the head. It is not sexy at all. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's part of the job." And like you were saying too, it's like adopting that just a job mindset. And because we're both contracting now, we were talking about this earlier too. It's like so nice to just close the laptop and have a very, very, very transactional relationship with it now. Even like I've never had this kind of transactional relationship with a job ever. I've always
Mm-hmm.
had like some kind of emotional investment or at least like tie and I don't know, maybe excitement around it. And now I'm like, I'm showing up when the hours require me to, and then I'm not thinking twice about it when I close my laptop at the end of the day. Like, see you later. So,
That's how it should be, regardless of your contract status or not, you know?
yeah, like lots of learning for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of learning. The other thing I wanted to talk about is I've had a couple of people reach out to me now on TikTok, and I feel like I've kind of talked about this. And it's like crazy to me that people are like, I want your advice and I want you to give me like tips and tricks on the PM world and what that's like. So I've had a couple of like mentee mentorship kind of relationships starting, and it's so freaking cool. Like it's been, I don't know, like an unexpected positive thing that's come out of TikTok, the podcast, looking for a job that I'm like, wow, this is really cool and I'm really enjoying this. But on the flip side of that, I feel like I'm doing such a bad job at like managing my work calendar, the podcast calendar, my social
Mm-hmm.
calendar, and then like mentee mentoring conversations. And so I'm like a little turned upside down and I'm trying to do a better job at
It
figuring out
is,
like
yeah,
when things
balancing.
are, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Plus, like going into the office is like such a time suck. What is it like going into the office, Sarah?
I told Michael that the office is exactly like the office in the office.
Stop.
No, I'm
Really?
serious. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's like high security, obviously. So there's like all these clearances and stuff. Like you can't go into
Yes.
certain parts of the building. But yeah, it's cubicle life, baby.
Gorgeous. I'm going to send you a plant so you at least have something
I
living,
did buy a
breathing to sit on
I
your
did,
desk.
yeah, I did buy a snake plant on. I was
Good.
like, I need a little air purification, some green on my
Totally.
desk. But no, you're totally right. Like that's something that I went in Monday. Today is my first day of working from home. I went in 4 days this week in a row.
That's a lot.
Imagine how I'm feeling after working from home for the past 2 years, two and a half
Are you
years.
so tired?
Clearly that's what my emotional breakdown was. It's just pure fatigue. No, but yeah, no, I'm definitely tired. But I also think like I told Michael, we went on a walk last night at 8 o'clock. We haven't eaten dinner until 9 p.m. the
Yeah.
past 4 nights. And I told Michael, I was like, I think I want kids until it's days like these where I'm like, I don't know how people have kids and a full-time job and a partner and a dog.
It's so funny you mentioned that. I thought the exact same thing, especially this past
How?
week. I'm like, I feel like I can barely keep the house clean and like
Oh
keep
my
up
God,
on
our kitchen.
laundry.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. And like actually feed myself a decent meal at a decent time of the day. And I
Go
only
on a
went into
walk.
the office 2 days. I mean,
Oh,
it's
mm-hmm.
insane. It's
It is absolutely insane. And like, I don't know how it is for you, but all of our meetings are done at your desk. There's like
yeah.
maybe one in-person meeting. Otherwise, you're just sitting at your desk, phoning in, screen's not even on. I'm like,
Mhm.
why are we here? Is it
It's
to enjoy each other's companies? Because I haven't even met anybody in the office.
you're like, I'm not enjoying anyone.
Oh my God. I saw a fact the other day that was like talking about the carbon emissions of everything. And I didn't even think about that because selfishly I was like, oh, the amount of time on my
hmm
end. And then I was like, wait, I'm driving into work to sit at my desk. I'm dealing with traffic, looking around. I'm like, how many other people are doing the same thing? Like, why are we? And then there's like all these tornadoes and all this horrible, shitty weather. And I'm like, I wonder how much better it would be if people who didn't actually need to go into an office didn't go into an office.
I wonder how much more sense that would make. I don't know. I'm not a genius, but that sounds pretty revolutionary to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So safe to say, Ellen and I are just loving, living, laughing.
Wow. Yeah, we just love the corporate world so much. Live, laugh, love corporate America. It's our new slogan.
We're just going to keep saying, what have we done? What have we done?
Oh my God.
But if anything, we get to report it back to everybody else. It's fun.
Yeah, then we get to bitch and complain and everyone's like, wow, that's so funny. If there's one thing I love to do, one, talk about myself, and two, it's bitch and complain. Oh my God. We are going to jump into Kerry's episode. Her interview was incredible. She's also a project manager, so I hope she listens to the stand-up and she's like, I feel your pain, girlies. Or she's like, oh, I have ways to help both of you. So Kerry, if you have any advice, we're going to hit you up after this to get your words and pieces of wisdom because it's hard out there sometimes. Oh my God, I just totally forgot what I was going to say.
Friday.
No, literally, I wish you could have like just seen my brain. It was like lighting on all cylinders. And then like someone just turned off the lights in my head.
Firing on all cylinders is what they typically say.
Did I say lighting? Oh my God. I was going to say I need to go home, but I am indeed home.
Oh my God, we gotta wrap this up before I start crying again.
Dear. Yeah. Wow, what a silly, goofy episode we have here.
Everyone, please matching.
No, literally, I just need to have a center part, and then we'd be totally matching.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Okay. Everyone, please enjoy Kerry's episode. What's our call to action this week? We should have a listener call to action.
Take care of yourself.
If you know someone in the corporate world or not loving their job, go give them a hug.
Yeah. Hug yourself.
Hug yourself. Okay. Wow. Lovely mental health awareness. Enjoy Kerry's episode, as I've said for the 800th time. Bye. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode. Today, we are joined by Kerry Hoffman. She is a project manager with over 13 years of experience. She can project manage anything from your startup business to your personal to-do list. After 12 years of project managing product, engineering, sales, account management, and marketing teams, Kerry struck out on her own at the start of 2023. Kerry now runs her own consulting business, SoVeryKerry. She provides independent project management for mergers and acquisitions, company rebrands, website rebuilds, and any short-term project that would benefit from a project manager. In addition, Kerry is an Asana consultant, ambassador, and expert working with teams to revamp their project infrastructure, implementing new systems, and training teams on their upgraded processes. With her desire to always charter new frontiers, Kerry is an expert at bringing order to chaos in all areas of life. Welcome, Kerry, to the podcast. We're so happy to have you today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we were just talking before we officially started recording, and we became friends, Kerry and I, through LinkedIn, which is so funny to say. You were my first LinkedIn friend, and I'm very excited about that. But not only are we LinkedIn friends, Sarah also knows Kerry as well. So it's like 3 project managers are in a room. This is going to be a very interesting conversation.
Yes, I'm sure there will be lots of tips and tricks from everyone here for the listeners. Yeah.
Yes.
That usually happens when project managers get together. We're like, oh my gosh, everything's so organized and beautiful. And yeah, as Ellen was saying, it's funny, like the idea of LinkedIn, if you have ever doubted making connections or networks through LinkedIn, let this be the manifestation of it, if you will,
Yes.
of us coming together. And that is something, Kerry, we can get into a little bit, but I admire you so much for how active you are on LinkedIn. And I can only imagine that this is one of the many conversations that you had because of that. So we'll get into that in a little bit, but I want to take it back to little Kerry. What did you want to be when you grew up as a child?
I went through the astronaut phase when I was 7. I thought I will go to space. And that probably lasted about 2 months. I didn't, I think I rented the video of space camp. Like you could watch what it would be like to go to space camp. I never went to space camp. I think I kind of quickly pivoted to I'll be a lawyer because my dad was a lawyer. And, you know, you see different careers in front of you. And my mom was a speech pathologist. My dad was a lawyer. I went to school, so I saw teachers. I knew doctors. Although I kind of understood there were more jobs out there than just those like 4 buckets, no one was telling me they were a product manager, right? Or like, oh, I lead teams in this finance company. And so I saw that my dad was a lawyer. He seemed to love it. We seemed similar. That seemed like enough information for me. I was like, cool, I will go down this road.
We talk about that a lot of like what's just in front of you in terms of jobs. And like we joke about like looking around the room and like, manufacturing and engineering a computer screen or designing microphones or I don't know, like selling clothing, like things that are in front of you seem like actual jobs. But like even still, I'm learning about so many other career paths out there that it's like, oh, if you really sit and think about it for a moment, like, of course that needs to be someone's job to go do. But it's so interesting once that kind of that curtain comes up and you discover all these other career paths that exist outside of what you knew of.
Yeah, it's my mom and I travel every year to Aruba, and we were talking about what would our job be if we lived in Aruba. And she was saying that she would work at the towel hut where you get your towels for the beach. And then one of the hotels, they got rid of their towel hut and they replaced it with a towel machine. Where you put in your room number and you take out your own towels. And she said, well, there goes the job of working at the towel hut. And then I thought, but whose job was it to make this machine, to fill this machine, right? There was a lot that went behind this vending machine of towels. That was somebody's job, right? And so you start to think about what were all the jobs it took to make this thing happen, right?
Exactly.
There's a job for everything.
Okay, so you're calming my fears that AI and everything will completely rid everybody of every job ever.
That is such a legitimate fear to have, though, and it's somewhat refreshing or reassuring that I've already heard the feedback of, we can tell that this was AI generated, right? And so you're like, okay, so we can already sort of see through some of the pieces of this that are not so great, right, for the job space. But I know it's an area I need to skill up real fast.
Yes. I've always said with project managers that I'm like, half of it is organization, but also half of it is just people management, not soft skills. And I don't think a machine could ever replace me having to deal with 42 different personalities. We'll see though. Okay. So lawyer, did you stick with it? And at what point did you transition potentially out of that?
Yeah. So I went all in. I took the LSATs, I applied to law school, and then I went to it and graduated from it as well. Wow. So I thought while I was there, like I have 3 years, and by the end, something will click, like an interest that I have. And my 3rd year, I was the editor-in-chief of the Journal on Law and Gender. And I really liked the editing piece. Like I love just getting really lost in this legal text and doing all this editing work and managing all of these people. When I graduated, it was 2010. Jobs were still really hard to come by. And, as someone who was used to doing really well in school and being more towards the top in law school, I was not in the top half of that graduating class. I was not the person getting the law firm job that people covet. And so, by November after I graduated, I said, none of these job postings look interesting. to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was really interested in food. I had a food blog when I was going to say when that was still cool, because I feel like it's not cool it would just be
Cool.
it would be
Yeah.
Instagram now. I would have had a food
Yes.
Instagram
Yes.
now. And I thought maybe I could do something in food. And so my boyfriend at the time, his sister's friend was Tom Colicchio's assistant. And I was a huge Top Chef fan. And so I met with her. She put me in touch with someone at his restaurants, this woman named Katie Greco. And Katie said, if you're interested in food, you know, you could go into PR, you could go into writing, but you can't do any of that if you haven't at least worked in a restaurant. You need that experience. And so she got me an interview at his, you know, New York Times 2-star restaurant. And I had no experience ever working in a restaurant. And yeah, they hired me.
Talk about a crazy turn of events.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm sure my dad would be like, wow, that was great. 3 years of law school. And now you're in a restaurant. That is a crazy turn of events. You are right.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that for the working in the restaurant? What was that like? Like you said, you go through this crazy career transition. Jobs are hard. You're trying to find something you're passionate about, and you end up in this restaurant. What was that job like?
I mean, so I was a host for maybe 2 months, and then the maitre d' left, and I became the maitre d'. And I think that the maitre d' role is just project manager in training.
Totally.
Because the restaurant was 2 separate dining rooms, meaning they had separate kitchens, separate menus. So effectively, you know, one was a tavern and one was the main dining room, which had tasting menus and all of that jazz. And so, you know, on my open table computer, I had 2 instances up because they were separate floor plans. There were separate staff working. And, you know, he's, whether or not people know him now, he was in the celebrity chef realm, and it was right across the street from the Food Network. So, you know, you had like Alton Brown and like Scott Conan and Marcus Samuelson, like those types coming in. I remember one of the staff members saying to me once, oh, I see a reservation on the books for Tiffany Amber Thiessen. Do you think it's the Tiffany Amber Thiessen? And I was like, do you think there's a different Tiffany Amber Thiessen? Like,
Who is
duh,
that name?
of course it's Tiffany Amber Thiessen. And, you know, on a Saturday, we would probably have about between 400 and 450 people dine, right? And all of those people came through me. And so plotting out the night, you know, what's so fun about working in a restaurant, unlike working in a company, is like when someone comes to you with a problem, you can't tell them that you're going to get back to them on Friday. Like they're really cold. Their chair is broken. Their check is wrong. Like they don't like their table. You're not like, okay, cool. Let me like host a little retrospective and let you know how we're going to solve this in the future. They don't care about how you're going to do better next Valentine's Day. They need you to fix it now. And I loved it. I loved the energy. And I'm like, oh, can I just do like once a month, get back in there? It's the closest I feel to maybe how like athletes would feel about like playing a sport again.
Sure.
You're just problem solving.
Yeah.
By the end of the day, you've like probably exhausted 1,400 calories of just mental load.
Yeah.
You saying that reminds me, my history is I like worked in event spaces, and I remember when an event was on, it was like 6 hours, go time. And then by the end of it, you're exhausted, but there's something so fun about it. Like, yes, it is physically and mentally tiring to just like constantly be on and be problem solving, but it was one of those, like, if you got into it, you really enjoyed it. It was basically just like, a marathon, something athletic to it, if you will. And it prepares you for so much. I never got a, you know, kind of like that high school food and beverage fun part-time job. So I never got to experience it until, you know, post-grad full-time role. And I was like, this is so much fun. Like, I wish that is it feasible and sustainable to do it every day for 40 hours a week? I don't think so. So I'm sure you kind of got to a point where it was just like, things have to change a little bit. And what was that experience like transitioning out? Did you get your fill, and did you kind of find that next step while working there?
I knew it was time for me to move into something else when I had been there over a year, and everything else in my life I was missing a second time, because although I was friendly with people I worked with, no one else in my life was in this type of industry. And so, it's like, oh, it's Caitlin's birthday again, on a Saturday, where I'm never free ever on Saturdays. And so I just knew long term, there's not a version of this job that's good, that's, Monday through Friday. And I was looking for just a little bit more intellectual stimulation. And so I started looking around, and one of my favorite websites at the time was, it's no longer around, it's called Menu Pages. And this was before restaurants had websites. This sounds like I'm telling you about when I worked in like 1987. It was 2012, and you could go on Menu Pages and look up the menu of a restaurant, and you could like sort by neighborhood. And they had this like data entry job. I was like, oh, I'll just go, I'll apply. I got an interview, and I was very, I guess, lucky that the interview was great. And the feedback from the hiring manager was, this person seems a little bit maybe more intelligent than this data entry job. And so I guess my name came up in a meeting they had that week of all the interviews. And they were like, is there anything else we could bring her back in for to interview? And there was a new project coordinator job, and the person hiring for it had something on the website, on the job description, that said, bonus points if you've worked in a restaurant, because she believed that people who worked in restaurants knew how to hustle. And so I went back a week later and interviewed with her, went back a few weeks and interviewed with the team, and then started. Oh, and I should say that, so Menu Pages had recently been acquired by Seamless.com. So I interviewed at Menu Pages initially, but this job was going to be at Seamless. And so, in New York City, Seamless is a verb. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to work at this like cool tech company. It's in food, and it requires organization. It seems great. And so I started there in 2012.
It's so funny how things just fall in your lap when they're supposed to.
It's crazy.
How funny that specific job, one, they were like, okay, first of all, we need to get her in, and not only for this role, but maybe something else. And one of the job requirements is for the person to have worked in restaurants previously. The stars couldn't have aligned more perfectly right there. I also think it's interesting, like Sarah and I talk about this a lot, of like kind of how we discovered project management, because I feel like it's not, again, like we talked about earlier, no one grows up saying that they want to be a project manager. No. If you do, maybe like my kid one day will say that just because of me, but it's not common at all. And again, I didn't know what it was until a couple of years ago. And like, even with the two of you talking about with your previous experience, like that quick hustle of working in the event space or working in restaurants, like you're kind of working many projects with each table, with each event, with each day that you have. And I think it's interesting that it kind of just slowly snowballs into a career path, which it kind of sounds like that's how it worked for you as well. So tell me a little bit about that experience in your first true project coordinator, project management role.
The job when I started, it was my first job at a company with like snacks and lunch and like cool people to meet and hang out with. And it was challenging because the person who hired me was new, and she had inherited kind of a team of product managers, most of whom did not have product management experience. They kind of just had worked in other areas of the company and then took on the role of product owner. And so she brought me on because she was like, I don't know what anyone's really doing. No one seems to have a roadmap. And so it was it's always strange when you take on a job that's not a backfill. It's a net new role, right? Because you have the flexibility and creativity to decide what that role is. You also have to do a little bit of like, why did you hire me? And that's always my advice for people looking for project manager jobs. I always say, if you're in an interview, ask, is this a backfill or is this a net new role? And if this is a net new role, what was the problem you identified that led you to want to open this role? Because I do think too often when it comes to project managers with those roles being open, what happens is someone says, everything feels disorganized. Let's just get a project manager. And sometimes they do need someone full time. Other times, I don't know, it's like the same as hiring a kitchen organizer. I need someone to come a few times and get our house in order, and then you should be able to keep it in order, right? And there's kind of a distinction there. And so the first 6 months was basically that whole team kind of cycled out and a new team cycled in. And I found that running the day-to-day was relatively easy. It was really when I got to start to work on specific product rollouts where I got to work cross-functionally. I was like, oh, this is the awesome part of project management, right? Is getting these 7 different people and personalities. Like, I will never forget a product manager saying to me, Kerry, it seems like the engineers, they like you. How did you do that?
Yeah.
And, I
that
said,
is a hard feat. That is tough.
and
Winning over the hearts of minds of your developers and your engineers is essential. Essential.
And for me, I was like, oh, I get to know, I'm very interested in what people do. I get to know them, and I can't speak their full language, but I try to learn a few words, right? If I was traveling to a country where I didn't speak the language, I would try to learn a few key words to have that dialogue. And so I found that was my like secret weapon, is that I could work with a designer or an engineer or a product manager or a front desk associate because I am just genuinely interested in people and what they do.
Totally.
That's so important. And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't understand about project management. Ellen and I one time did a stand-up about project management, a one-on-one, if you would, because we do our monthly one-on-ones. And it was like a 35-minute conversation about project management. And we are like, is this boring? But obviously we don't think so. We just didn't think the audience. But all that to say, you are juggling work, but you're juggling personalities and you're juggling the work of other people. And it's a tricky line because obviously your role and the expectation of your role is to ship. You need to get this work done, but you're also managing people's time and what's on people's plates. And so there's that capacity question, and it's just a toss up of trying to keep all the balls in the air, and people that love that thrive.
Yes.
That is the person that is meant to be a project manager. I always say, if you ever were the person in like high school or college that would step up whenever there was a project on the table, you're like, I'll lead it.
Yes.
You're supposed to be a project manager in some capacity. Industry up to you, but that is your role. So I'm glad that you were able to find that. It sounds like you had a really good experience. What transition, did you find your next job, or did your next job find you?
I found my next job. I was at Seamless for almost 6 years. After 2.5 years, I moved to the B2B side of the house to manage a huge tech migration on the client side because Grubhub and Seamless merged, and Seamless had a corporate arm that Grubhub didn't. And basically the product and engineering team had to rebuild the entire corporate site. And then we had to move all the clients over in this process that I built out. And it just took it was taking a really long time. Priorities kept shifting. And a lot of the work I did to set that project up for success, I got it to the point where I was like, I don't need to actually be here for 7 more years that it takes to get it done. And so I was just ready to try something new. And so I went to Shutterstock, and that is where I got the idea of asking why you need a project manager for a job, because there was a lot going on and there were a lot of competing priorities. And I think they thought if they brought me in, I would basically build, like, here's all your project charters and here's how you do it, which I did. That didn't actually give me the resources though to do any of the projects. Right. And so when I was looking to leave, I was like, here's a Google Drive folder of project plans. If you have people to do the work, I wanted to kind of get through a bit of a hump there, see if things turned around. But one of my colleagues left Shutterstock to go to ClassPass, and I'd been a ClassPass member since 2015. changed my life. It changed how I worked out. And they had this senior project manager job open, and it was going to be a lateral move for me. But I was like, I want to go somewhere where I feel really excited about what they do. And it was in marketing, and I had never worked on a marketing team. I'd been on all these other tech teams. And so I got that job, and, I was there for 3.5 years. I was there through the pandemic, like made it through the one round of layoffs that they did, and grew that into, marketing, project management, but also just kind of team operations. And I did a lot of photo shoot production there, which that's always so fun when you get to work on a project where you're like, oh, I had no idea that I absolutely love doing this. Like, this is so much fun. This is so crazy, like booking locations and negotiating. And it kind of brought a lot of my interests together, because someone described my role there. It was her first day. We met. I told her what I did. And she said, oh, so you're the director of Miscellaneous. And she was so right. Like, yes, I was managing projects, also operations, also our budget. I was also the person with the keys to the marketing closet where we like kept extra swag. Basically, we had one channel owner for everything, and then me, catch all Kerry. And I kind of like that. Like, I like being the sweep of everything.
I have a question about your transition from the tech side to the marketing side. One thing I always talk about is the beauty, I think, of project management is you can take it to pretty much any industry. Once you have that foundation, like learning an industry, I think is easier than understanding like how to be a good project manager. And so all of my background is on the tech corporate side,
Okay.
and it's fun. I like it. My new job that I'm starting here in a little bit is going to be for like a financial services company, but it's specifically on like automation teams.
Okay.
And as I was going through my job hunt, I was like, oh, do I want to maybe step into the marketing side of the house? Maybe look at something more creative. How did you make that transition? And was it its big learning curve for you, or did it seem like an organic growth for you in your new role?
It was a learning curve, kind of on two different sides of the coin. So personality wise, if you've not really worked with designers and copywriters, that is a new type of personality to get to know. And I have a lot of designer and copywriter friends and colleagues, and it's very different, right, from a product manager and engineer where like, oh, we have sprints and they
Right.
end on Thursday and we ship on Fridays, right? Like, a creative team might want to spend 2 hours in a brainstorm meeting talking about ideas for the social posts for March, right? And it when you are project managing a creative team, oftentimes meetings end with what did you want us to do? Like, it's just like trying to figure out what the actual output was going to be. But I enjoy that piece because it kind of trained me on how do I give the people I work with space to create, right? And not be such a robot of like, well, you needed to do it by Thursday, right? So that was kind of one piece of it. But the other piece was just like understanding what marketing is. Like, if you don't really work on marketing, it's very easy to be like, oh, there's commercials and ads and you spend money on it. Like, even just understanding how all of that works, especially when ClassPass was going through like a need for a high growth period, there was a lot to learn, but I think it is very doable to learn it. But I didn't just walk in being like, I can project manage anything. I say that now.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that way then.
Any specific advice for anyone that's looking to make a career transition between industries? Same career path, but different industries.
I'm a big fan of like, I read a book on anything. If something new is coming in my life, I'm like, oh, I should find a book on this topic. But overall, I think that there's just there's people on LinkedIn, right? Like all of us that are posting interesting content. Like, don't wait for your next perfect job posting to come up to say, oh, I'm going to have to learn about finance, right? Like do that learning now, wherever you are, right? Express interest in the engineers, right? Ask people if you go into an office what they're working on, right? You can just start to pick up just a little bit if you want to be that Jill of all trades, right? Just start to absorb as much as you can where you are and then see where it takes you.
I
like
love
that.
the Jill of all trades also.
Oh, yes.
I have never heard that before, and I'm taking a mental note to use that in the future.
We love
Yeah.
inclusive
Yes. Jill
language.
of all trades.
Yes. Kerry, that's so funny because Alan and I, when we were talking about project management, my background is in marketing, her background is in tech. So it's like we're speaking the same language, but just with different accents, basically.
Yes, I love that.
And it is interesting, just like the difference in work and the difference in people, and you can take those foundations of project management with you wherever you go. But I think it's exciting. I'm curious, after working in both, like if a job was to land in your lap tomorrow, is there one of the two industries, or even like a hyper focus within those industries, that you found that you really enjoy?
I still feel so drawn to anything hospitality or hospitality adjacent. You know, I did a contract with a company called In Kind last year, and they help fund restaurants, and there's a platform for users to get discounts at restaurants. You know, the I'm sure people, I don't know what people text with their partners during the day, but like my husband and I are just texting, oh, did you see this restaurant open? Did you see this chef moved? Like that's kind of our interest in our passion. And I also just like the hospitality mindset, right? If you haven't read Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara, who's the restaurateur behind 11 Madison Park, that's one of those books that's about hospitality, but very generally applicable. And I just think having that general mindset of even how you approach work, right, is the goal is to make it nice, to make people feel welcome and understood and have their voice heard and have a good experience. That's just what I'm trying to do as a project manager. So I still always do love hospitality. And now that I've been indoctrinated into marketing, I do love that personality. It's fun. And I like working with those teams.
Amazing.
We love a good book recommendation. I'll make sure to include that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Talk to us about your experience with ClassPass. When did that come to an end? And when did you make that transition to the next step?
So it was around February 2022. And we all have those days at work where you're just like, everyone is annoying me today.
The truth.
It happens. And so I went on LinkedIn Jobs. That's how annoyed I was that day, and applied for a few jobs. I was having that moment at work where, you know, we were finishing up high season, and you start to say like, the great thing about project management is you get to do something, mess up a bunch of stuff, and then do it again and do it better, right? Like that is the point. And then I reached a point where I'm like, well, I've done 4 New Year's campaigns. Do I have a 5th in me, right? Or is this going to be more of the same? And there was this job at Sendoso, which was a B2B gifting platform, not quite hospitality, but sort of hospitality adjacent. And it was a director title. It was going to be more money. And I thought, all right, maybe I should just kind of take this risk. And it felt like a huge risk to take. But it also was coming at a time where, you know, we were 2 years into the pandemic. On March 31st, at the start of the pandemic, my dad died of COVID.
I'm sorry.
And so, you know, the pandemic was hard for everyone for a variety of reasons. I always say like it might have been hard for some, probably a little bit harder for like me and my mom and my brother. And so my wedding was coming up, which had been postponed because it was in 2020. Yeah. And so it kind of just felt like, I don't know if this is the perfect job, but it does feel like a good time to press a hard reset on the computer and just like have this wedding and come back and sort of say like, pandemic's behind us. Let's just start anew. And so it was more of a timing thing than like, this is the exact right thing to do. And 3 weeks into my new job, they laid off 120 people. And about 3 months after that, another 120. And then it came for me January 2023, the first week of the year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I am so curious. I would love to see a study, and then I want to hear about your experience of employees that work for a company that go through rounds of layoffs. It's like looking at like it's like watching an ending. This anticipatory anxiety. Am I next?
Yes.
What do I need to do? How do I overperform? Do I need to find a new job? Like that instability that it causes both in how you show up to work, but then also how you show up in like your life outside of that. And I'm sure like 20 years from now, this will be a study.
Yeah.
people
Totally.
that faced potential, you know, ending to their career unexpectedly because of a layoff. Like, how do they show up in their life outside of that? How was it for you in that time of 3 weeks in? There's one swing of the axe, you know, later on, and like to watch that happen, to watch these new coworkers, and then to have it happen to yourself. Like, what was it experience like, and were you able to show up to work fully and like really invest?
What was interesting was this was a role where they had the layoffs. Okay, I made it through. Great.
Mm-hmm.
And that summer, you know, I got a lot done. I got their house in order. And by fall, I thought, I'm not really sure why they hired me to do this job, honestly, because I was supposed to get a team. I didn't have a team. I got everything in a good spot. And then when you lay people off, like there's not as much to manage because we're doing less because there's fewer people to do it. And so that's when you start to say, like, should I start looking for another job? Should I start doing things on the side? And I kind of just enjoyed the fall of, I don't have tons to do and I'll do enough. And maybe my bad attitude was that I didn't think there was a level of work I could do that was going to save me from this sinking ship, because it did feel like the entire ship was sinking. And so I thought, okay, I'll just cross this bridge if and when I get to it. And then the bridge came.
Yeah. I feel like a bobblehead over here because I'm just nodding at everything that you are saying. I experienced something very similar. I say that I survived 3 rounds of layoffs because it truly feels like you're cut off and see you later, or you survive and maybe we'll keep you on for another couple months and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And it was 4 rounds of layoffs within a year period.
Yeah. That's tough.
And the 4th one, I was like, I'm out of here. But it is that, like, do I put in the work if I know it's going to be a sinking ship? Is it worth it? Can I just kind of coast along?
Yeah.
And not put yourself through the stress? Because it's like kind of at that point of 1 or 2 or even 3 rounds of layoffs, it's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Why put myself through all of this stress and extra work if no matter the level of effort that I put in, is it going to be enough to keep me? Maybe not. I mean, and I so relate with that, like, kind of coasting mentality, because especially as a project manager, throughout each of those layoffs, I'm sure priorities change and a project that you were working on gets killed. So it's like, okay,
what do you need me for?
Right. So it is a very strange thought process. And it's also so stressful. Good Lord. I mean, just the instability of your job, even though you still have one. Sarah, it's like what you said, that anticipatory anxiety of, okay,
you're just waiting.
When's it going to be me? I mean, it's a terrible thing to go through. And I'm sure lots of people have been going through that recently as well, unfortunately. Talk to us about that when in January, I know that's when you started your business. So what was that transition of leaving behind a company and starting something new?
When the first round of layoffs happened, I saw, LinkedIn, those individuals, I got this new job, yay. And then like at least half of those people by that November, December had been laid off from the new job that they took, right? Because everything was so, the stability was not there. And I thought, okay, so I could just go get a job, like any job.
Mm-hmm.
and maybe I'll get laid off again in 6 months. And do I want to just go through like it? I just didn't know what felt solid. Like nothing felt that secure. You know, it's like, oh, what about companies with lots of funding? Well, then maybe they're going to have to tighten the purse strings, right? And who knows? And so I had wondered over the past like 4 to 5 years prior, I had done some, like I worked with a team, an account management team for 6 weeks on building out a process for them to work with, you know, high priority clients. And I thought, okay, I've done some of this before. I wonder if I could do it full time, maybe. And then if I try this, I won't get a job at a company, so I can't get laid off. And if I was ever going to try this, now this is the moment. I am unemployed, and it's a tough economy. And my husband at the time said, I just don't want you to feel discouraged if it's hard to find some of these contract jobs because times are tough. I said, right. Or there's going to be more opportunities in this space because companies don't want to take on full-time employees and pay them, you know, health insurance when they're like, we just have this short-term need. Let's see how it goes. And so I did what I do, which is I talked to anyone who's ever done any sort of freelance. Like we had hired someone at ClassPass for a short-term project. I reached out to her. I'm like, hey, you and I met once for 45 minutes. Can we talk?
Leveraging your connections.
Yes.
And she said yes. And I spoke to one person named Luke, and I said, I'm going to do this for 3 months. See how it goes. And he said, okay, but you need to do it for a year. I said, okay, why? He said, because you need to understand the seasonality of the work that you do. You know, you might get a ton of clients in the first 3 months, or if you get none, that doesn't mean that they're not coming. So you need to understand the seasonality of what you do. And you also need to see the benefits of referrals from the jobs that you successfully complete. And so I said, all right, I can just take this as it comes. I sat down with my notebook for a few days and said, all right, what can I do? I've implemented Asana with teams and companies. I can do that. I can also just project manage any ad hoc project. And so I put it out there on LinkedIn that I was not really looking for jobs, but looking for different opportunities. I found a few Asana clients through Upwork, but 86% of the jobs I had in my first year were either working directly with someone I had worked with before, or someone I worked with before put me in touch with a company that they knew. And then the other 14% was Upwork. Like one person found me, you know, through Google. And so I had 17 clients last year, and I made $800 more than what my salary had been at Sendoso. That would have been great if I was like, I made $800.
or 1,800.
Yes.
Right.
So that's next year.
Yeah. So it's, you know, I was just telling someone it's very similar to Rent the Runway. I rent all of my clothes. Freelancing full-time is like Rent the Runway, where you're constantly looking for things to wear. But if it's not a perfect fit, it's probably okay short-term, right? You're like, oh, this dress is like a little long or it's a little big, but I can probably wear it a few days, right? And so, but then a week goes by and you're like looking for all new clothes. And so if you like that energy of kind of constantly hustling, constantly meeting people, maybe not knowing if you have any jobs lined up a month from now, it can be great. For me, I feel like I've met like 15x people that I knew before I started this, like even on this call. And that's what keeps me excited on a day-to-day basis.
I love the Rent the Runway analogy. That's like
Definitely.
It clicks perfectly in my mind. I'm like, yep, I get that analogy perfectly.
I love hearing about that journey. I feel like there's so many takeaways. Give it time. And
Yes.
like give yourself time, give yourself the freedom, give yourself the flexibility, and take the moment to like jot down everything that you've ever done at any job. Like
Yes.
the skills that you have. I think sometimes people forget how much they have to offer. And there's always there's always a company that has a need of any sort. And the beauty of project management is that although you're not an expert in everything, you know enough about everything that like you can pick up and you can take off anything that you want.
Yes.
And to also like make more money than you were making at your full-time job, That's like the beauty of it. And I'm sure there's so many other, learning lessons that you've had. I remember there was a post that you talked about on LinkedIn. A lot of people quit their job because of maybe their boss or a manager and think that by freelancing, they're ridding themselves of that one boss or that one manager. And you were like, no, by freelancing, you have like 5 managers at once, potentially more. And like sometimes freelancing is not this glamorous journey, and it's a lot of hustling and it's a lot of putting yourself out there. But I can't even imagine the growth that you've had just within yourself over the last few years. So kudos to you, Kerry, because that's amazing.
Thank you.
If you could give like a quick best and worst parts of freelancing, what would it be?
The best part is the variety, not only in the type of work you do, the types of companies you work for, the types of people that you meet. Like there's a variety in everything, right? And it's fun to help a company get their Asana up to speed, but also learn about like the most eco-friendly fridge for a supermarket, right? Because like that was one of the Asana tasks, right? So I love that piece of it. The hardest part is 100% the constant context switching. Like we all think that we're already doing that. We're like, oh, my mom is texting and I'm slacking and like, chat slacking, not slacking off. But also like I have to take my dog for a walk. When you freelance, you might have like 6 clients in Slacks and emails. And so when you are kind of doing tasks at the same time, there's no scenario where you're like, on Mondays I work for this client, on Tuesdays I work for this client. And so my first 3 clients, like everyone had someone named Heather. And I'm like, this is so confusing. Everyone is named Heather. And so it's a little bit more of a mental load than having one job, I would say.
Interesting learning curve.
Yeah. Good to know. All right. Well, I was going to say, I don't know why we're building this up.
Yeah.
Curious, how do you define success?
I define success by making one small difference for one person, because I struggle with that, where I want to teach a class and I want someone to walk away, like have a whole new set of skills. Right. And I'm like, if people just walk away and they say, oh, because you said this one thing, I now do things this way, and that sticks with them, that is success to me. Like I am not a neurosurgeon. I am not going to like cure any sort of cancer. But if someone feels like they have more time on the weekend to have fun because I gave them this project management tip and made something more efficient for them, like that is success to me. So I try to do that every day. So there's like one small thing I can help somebody with. That's great.
I like that it's manageable to do on a daily basis, but it also gives you that fulfillment of, okay, I made a difference today. That's awesome. All right, we're going to get into some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Are you ready for the first one?
Ready.
All right. One thing you cannot live without during the workday.
It is a workout. So
ooh, that's the first time.
Yeah, I like it.
That's what gets me awake. It's also like the instructor will be telling us what to do, and I'm off in la la land because I'm not quite awake yet. I need that time to just do my thing, get that energy, and then be able to start my day fresh.
Love it.
Definitely. What is one of your favorite benefits that you've ever had at a job?
I did have at ClassPass 200 ClassPass credits, which is like 25 classes. And then I also had it at Sendoso as a corporate benefit. And so I just think, subsidizing workouts, I think workouts are something I need every day. And I think promoting that is really great.
That's awesome. Oh, I'm jealous. What is your most annoying corporate pet peeve?
If you were going to see a Broadway show, it might be 70 minutes, might be 90 minutes, might be 115 minutes, right? When you go to work, meetings are 30 minutes or 60 minutes, but there's no universe in which meetings are only 30 minutes or 60 minutes, right? But we're just conditioned that is the length of time. But sometimes it might take 12, and sometimes it might take 112. And I wish we would all be a little bit better at saying, These were the 3 things we had to talk about, and we talked about all of them. So even though there's only 4 minutes left, go, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to. I mean, I worked with someone who would just say, what else? What else? What else? What else? I'm like, nothing else. Shut it down.
We're done. We're efficient over here.
Yeah.
Okay, super quick last one. What is your favorite way to unwind after work?
I really like to go out to dinner with friends, because I have a dinner tonight with my friends, and I have a club. It's book TV club, where we read books that have been adapted into TV shows, and then you also have to watch the TV show. And there's a spreadsheet, obviously. I just feel like when I go out and I'm out of my house and I'm with people, I feel like it's not even the same as a work day. I feel like it's a whole other day, and it just pulls me away in a way that I can't mimic if I'm just like reading a magazine on my couch.
Mm-hmm. Good time with friends. Absolutely. Yeah. Especially, I think we all work remotely. So I think that's important to go get that social interaction.
Yes,
for sure.
Kerry, thank you so much for spending time with us. We had so much fun having you and learning all about your career evolution, project management things, which are close to our hearts. So thank you so much for spending your time with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Amazing. We will include all of the places to find Kerry in the show notes, including that book that she recommended as well. So make sure to check out all the places that you can find her and SoVeryKerry. Thanks again for listening to another episode of Just a Job. Make sure you're following us, all the places that we are, which is TikTok, Instagram, Spotify, LinkedIn. Thank you, Sarah.
YouTube.
And YouTube. Yes. Have a fabulous Monday. And remember, at the end of the day, it's just a job. Bye.